Well, welcome back to Life on Cars. Now, something a bit different today. This episode is going to be all about the Jaguar Leaper, or the Leaping Cat, the mascot that is known and loved around the world for Jaguars. Now, I read online recently that Jaguar, the next generation of Jaguars, sort of 2025 onwards, they're going to be completely removing any signs of the traditional Leaper, which is a shame, and it got me thinking about doing this video. Now, I know for the last few years Jaguar have been putting like a plastic Jaguar Leaper on the back of some of their vehicles, and then some Jaguars don't have any Leapers at all. My own XK, for example, there's no sign of any Leaping Cat on that, only the growler badges. And it got me thinking, and I've done a bit of research online and decided to put this video together for you. So I hope it doesn't get too nerdy, so stick with it. And then at the end of the video, we're going to have a look at my own Leaper and see what we're going to do with this. So I hope you enjoy the video, and let's go. So where does this story start then? Well, it would appear that a certain William Lyons was once very annoyed by a vehicle that popped up in the service area of the workshop, and it was an SS saloon, and apparently it had a Jaguar Leaper on the bonnet, and he was quite annoyed because he said it looked like a cat had been shot off a fence. And after seeing that, he actually commissioned an employer that he had on board at the time, a certain William Rankin, or Bill Rankin as he was known by, and he was actually working for William Lyons and Jaguar and SS Cars as a advertising boss, but he was actually a sculptor as well, so he was commissioned with fashioning a more suitable Leaper to be used on Jaguars. Anyway, there would appear to be a little bit of confusion around that original mascot. What happened to it? It was reportedly seen on Prince Michael of Romania's SS 100 vehicle in 1937. Anyway, the next part of the story is that William Rankin did actually pass the job on to Gordon Crosby, or Frederick Gordon Crosby, his full name. And he was a good choice, to be honest, because at the time he was the lead illustrator for the Autocar magazine, and he was really skilled at working with metal. He did actually design the Bentley Flying Bee mascot as well, which is a beautiful mascot. And it's believed he was a fan of SS cars, which is what Jaguar were called in the beginning. Anyway, fast forward to December the 23rd in 1938, and an issue of Autocar announced, priced at 2 guineas, this Jaguar mascot has just been produced especially for the SS company. It may be obtained from any SS agent. And there you can see a picture of the original paper script which was inserted into Autocar. So 2 guineas was the equivalent of 40 shillings at the time, around about $2 for those of you listening from America, so that wasn't very expensive. Anyway, subsequent sales literature mentioned the design was by F. Gordon Crosby, so he was credited for that in subsequent publications. And interestingly, the very first prototype still exists, and it's a huge bronze creation. And that bronze creation was passed down to Gordon Crosby's son, and he decided to sell it at the Goodwood auction in June 1996. And a buyer in England bought that mascot. It's thought that 5 prototypes were built originally, and that only one now remains. Interestingly, it's thought that the original castings for these bronze prototypes were done by an Italian craftsman by the name of Palanti. Now, his workshop was in the Shoreditch area of East London, so nobody's really sure what happened to Palanti, his workshop and his records. Were they destroyed, or are the papers tucked away somewhere? Who knows? Anyway, you might be interested to know that that original bronze Leaper, when it sold at auction in 2011, it sold for £45,750, around $73,000 at the time. So that was a significant auction bid that went in for that. I guess it's unique though, isn't it? Completely unique, that bronze Leaper. So on to the actual mascots then. So there's basically three versions of the fixed mascot, as I'll call it. In other words, the mascot that's fixed directly to the bonnet or the radiator cap, which was the original version 1. So that version 1 mascot, it was very similar to the original bronze sculpture, but some of the features of the face and the body were smoothed out a bit to make it easier to produce. But anyway, it's easily recognised, and it's still very similar as we know and see the mascot today. So it has those distinctive features. So the mouth looking quite snarly, the ears tight against the head, the right front paw slightly ahead of the left, and the rear legs in a crouching position as if the cat is about to pounce. So how do you recognise a version 1 Jaguar Leaper? Well, it has a pear-shaped base which was designed so it could be mounted onto the radiator cap. And at the time they were known as SS saloon cars, the Jaguars of the day, and that's where the majority of these version 1 Leapers will have been mounted. It's worth noting as well that the production Leapers were not made out of bronze. They were made out of what was known as pot metal, which was a cost-effective scrap metal almost solution, where there was metal melted down that was left over from other casting jobs. Some of those early ones do suffer from badly pitting on the chrome, probably due to the low quality metal, but things improved after the war, because remember this was pre-war in the day, and they started after the war to use a copper plating which went on first, and then the chrome could be applied afterwards. There seems to be a little bit of uncertainty on who actually made those version 1 mascots, although some people think it is Wilmot Breeden who did eventually make the rest of them. And the reason why there's a bit of confusion there on the version 1s, there's no maker's marks or stamps on those, whereas the following Leapers all get a Wilmot Breeden number stamped underneath the body of the Leaper. Also, those version 1 mascots, there is really no information about how many were made. The value seems to be going up. So it would appear that the version 1 was the standard offering until the Mark V saloon went out of production in 1951. They remained available for a bit longer as parts items through the dealers, but we now need to fast forward to 1955 and the Mark I saloon, the 2.4 litre, and it was offered with a mascot as an optional extra on the standard model, and eventually as standard on all other models. But although it stayed the same overall length, the mascot had undergone quite a radical reshaping. So let's have a look at version 2. So one of the first noticeable differences is the back legs on the cat are now completely outstretched, and this was to accommodate the different mounting point, because the mascot now was going to be mounted on the bonnet, so it needed a flat-bottomed fixing, and that fixing was designed to blend smoothly with the line of the central chrome strip on the bonnet that you probably recognise on the likes of a Mark II Jaguar. So you can still find a few versions of the original version 2s for sale on the internet, and the number was 7/10091/0, and they are actually quite rare. I've had a look recently and I've noticed some for sale which have 7/10091/1 WBB, so that's a slightly later casting of the version 2, and there's, like I say, there's a few of them available for sale online if you're interested. So the WBB that you see underneath these Jaguar Leapers is the maker's mark, Wilmot Breeden. That's not a Jaguar part number, it's the maker's part number. So that version 2 Mascot, it had a good run. It had 14 years and it was used on the Mark 1, the Mark 2, it was used on the Mark 8, the S-Type, the 240, the 340 and the XK 150. And I think on those cars it looks really, really good, the Leaper. So on all of those cars, this is a bonnet mounted Leaper that's fixed with 2 bolts. The other interesting thing about the version 1 and version 2 Leapers are they're both a similar length, which was 7.75 inches. There was even a variant of the version 2 because Sir William Lyons, he did notice that the Leaper was sort of nose down on the sloping bonnet of a Mark 1 saloon, so what they had to do was to change the mounting, and I think originally they actually just put a wedge underneath to lift the nose of the Leaper up, but eventually it was redesigned so that it was a slightly different base which raised the angle of the nose on the Leaper. You can see on this picture here where the base was redesigned to lift the Jaguar up, and you can also see on this picture where the base will have been designed with a recess to allow it to fit over that chrome strip. Okay, at this point I just want to draw your attention to this image, which is actually a different style of Mascot that was used on the Mark 7 in 1951, and it's a winged depiction of a Jaguar's face. And well, what do you think of this one? It's a bit of an unusual looking face, isn't it? Well, that Mascot remained right up until the car was uprated in 1955, and then it returned to the Leaper style. So yeah, quite unusual, that one. Incidentally, this winged Mascot was also made by Wilmot Breeden. Anyway, these Mascots are very hard to find now, they're quite rare. So let's move on to version 3. So you can see in this picture here that the Leaper was actually shortened, and it's shortened to 5 inch. The other thing you can see on this picture of 3 Leapers is the original version 3, the tail protruded beyond the base, and that left it a little bit vulnerable to damage, so they actually modified that and ended up putting a fillet of metal which secures the tail to the base a little bit better, as you can see there on the picture. So version 3 first appeared in 1961 on the Mark 10 saloon. All version 3 Mascots are bonnet mounted with 2 bolts going through the bonnet. You can quite clearly see on this picture the casting numbers from Wilmot Breeden underneath the Leapers for version 3. So I can see there that we've got 724,265, and sometimes you'll see 724,265,2 and 724,265,3, and they all have the letter W or WB after the numbers, but sometimes you can't see the B because it's being polished off in the factory during the finishing process. So version 2 was discontinued in early 1970, and then there is information that Jaguar gave instructions of how to fit the smaller version 3 to the bonnets of the Mark 1, the Mark 2 and the S-type saloons. Apparently it was Service Bulletin N84 of November 1971. I've struggled to find out when production started and stopped for those version 3 Leapers. The information doesn't seem to be available. The other interesting thing about the version 3 is they were never fitted as standard to the XJ Series 1, Series 2 and Series 3 saloons. So if you see an XJ Series 1, 2 or 3 with a bonnet mounted Leaper, then that's been done afterwards. It might have been done by the dealer on the owner's request, but they were not fitted as standard to those vehicles or the XJ40 series either. And in around 1974 there started to be some European safety laws on bonnet mounted Mascots that they had to basically retract and bend or break off easily if they were struck, so that if there was an accident and somebody was knocked over, it wouldn't cause further injury to that person. So like I say, it was the Jaguar 420G which left production in 1970. That was really the last time Jaguar were fitting these Leapers to vehicles in the factory. And like I said, the XJ6 series 1, 2 and 3, they didn't have bonnet mounted Leapers. In fact, you've got to fast forward 25 years later to when Mascots were actually officially fitted. Although doing my research for this video, I did find a Jaguar advert of a B-Red, which is a 1985 car in England, and it's an official Jaguar advert, that with a version 3 Leaper mounted on the bonnet, which is interesting because basically, like I say, they weren't mounted by the factory at all from 1970 up to 1994. But then in 1994 it did make an official return, not to cars designated for the UK but for the US market, specifically on the X300 range. And you can see on this picture how they were designed to retract so that they complied with the various safety laws. So in England we didn't officially get these spring-loaded versions. They were basically for the USA and the export market. Yeah, it's a bit of a grey area about fitting these Jaguar Leapers to cars that were not originally fitted with them in the factory. So I think for the UK, it basically, the law says that if it was originally fitted to a car at production, then it's perfectly fine. But if it didn't have a Mascot, like the XJ series and the XJS, then strictly speaking, that's not legal, but I don't think there'd be many police that would pull you up for that. So there you go then. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of history that I've managed to pull from the internet on Jaguar Leapers. My interest was spiked because my dad had an XJ6 Series 2 1979, a T-Reg car, and when he got that, I believe a year later, well, he didn't get it brand new, I think he got it in 1980, and I've got this vivid memory of going with him to a Jaguar garage, and he asked for a Leaper to be fitted to the bonnet, and I can remember we watched as the mechanic measured up and drilled the bonnet for the Leaper, and it's a vivid memory. I was probably just a young lad at the time. I was probably 10 years old, maybe 11 years old, and it's stuck in my mind that, and I think his next Jag that he had as well, which was a Series 3 XJ6, I think he had a Leaper mounted to the bonnet of that Jaguar as well, and that's what sort of spiked my interest, and I ended up getting hold of a version 3 Leaper myself, which I've got here today. So my dad sadly passed away a few years ago, and he never got to see my Jaguar. He would have loved to have seen that and had a ride in it, but sadly it's not to be. But you know, shortly after he passed away, I was at a car show, and there was a couple of people there selling a few odds and ends, a bit of an auto jumble. And I was looking around the various things for sale, and I noticed on the bench this Leaping Cat, and it was literally like that. It had some bubble wrap, and then the head was sticking out. And as soon as I saw it, I just had to have it, because it was kind of reminding me of my dad and his XJ6s. So what did I actually end up getting from the auto jumble then? When it turns out it is a genuine Wilmot Breeden version 3 Leaper. It's got the correct number on the bottom there for a version 3, and I don't think it's ever been on a car. Looking at the chrome and looking at the studs, I think it's never ever been fitted to a vehicle. So yeah, it's quite a nice Leaper. But ever since I bought that Leaper, it's just been sat in the back of my toolbox doing nothing. So I think it's high time this lovely cat came out and saw the light of day, and let's do something with it, because it certainly deserves it. Well, there we go then, another episode completed. And can you believe it's episode 100 for Life on Cars? And I really want to say thanks very much for those of you that are regulars on the channel and you've been watching through all the videos and you've been with me while I've been building this channel up. We've got lots more to come, got a few more videos in the bank which I'm just editing up, so those will be along the way very soon. And before I go, I just want to say thank you very much to Jim from Minden in Ontario for sending me this fantastic plate. It's got 66 Healy on it. He had a Austin Healy which this plate featured on for a while. I think he had 2 Austin Healys, he said in a letter to me, and he sent me that all the way from Canada. So thank you very much. And it's now proudly on the garage door, which is fast becoming the number plate door. If anyone's got any plates from around the world that you want to send me, I'd really appreciate it, because I do love these different style plates. What's coming next on Life on Cars? Well, there's going to be a couple of vids on the Jag, and then a couple of videos for other vehicles as well, and a tool test coming along as well. So in the meantime, stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you very soon. Bye bye.